of the things that gets discussed a lot at Fryette internally about the power station is this idea that it can be used to discover or rediscover qualities of the amplifiers that we already own, that we forgot about or we didn't even know existed before. You know, as guitar players who've been playing for a while, chances are we have a stockpile of amplifiers that, you know, we used for a while, but then maybe got relegated to the archives because something new came along that, you know, promised to deliver the same thing in a smaller package, or, you know, I wanted more headroom or less headroom, or more channels, less channels, more gain, less gain, or whatever. The reasons are various and sundry, but the fact remains that many of us have a stable of amplifiers that, you know, we've only looked at one way and only used in one way before. And the power station is a tool that we can use to kind of recontextualize these amps and get more life out of them, and certainly get more joy out of some of these amplifiers that, you know, have maybe been sitting in the corner for a while and getting no love. So in the spirit of rediscovery, I decided to take one of the amplifiers in my collection and see if I could repurpose and recontextualize it tonally. And that amplifier is a Mesa Mark IV combo. And I've used that basically two different ways in the past. One is basically as a 2-channel amp, you know, using channel switching. I know it's a 3-channel amp, but I'm one of those people that, you know, really didn't find much use for that middle kind of dirty rhythm channel. So I would just switch between the clean channel and then the high gain channel for my leads, and I would use a delay pedal in the effects loop. The second way that I used it was just basically as a clean platform for my pedal board. So I'd plug my board directly into the front end of the amp. I didn't use the effects loop, and just use the clean channel, get all my gain from the pedal board, and you know, that was that, and it worked great for that purpose. So the thing about these two examples is that, you know, I was really only looking at the amplifier kind of in this one specific paradigm, which is that it had a big 6L6 power section that really just existed to make things louder, you know. So I never got the power section involved in tonal shaping in any sort of meaningful way. And why would I? Because, you know, I like to use time domain effects, and when you brown up the power section, you just wind up with a bunch of mush, you know. So I really only looked at the amplifier kind of in this limited scope, like it can only deliver the goods in this specific application. But with a tool like the power station, you know, I decided to go back and see if it can deliver some extra groovy tonal tricks if we just start to introduce some power tube saturation into things. All right, now keep in mind, I haven't done this yet with this particular amplifier, and they're not particularly well known for their push power amp characteristics. That doesn't mean that they're bad, but it just means that people don't normally use these amps in this particular way. So we may find out that it yields limited useful results, but nevertheless, I thought it would be fun to document the process and see what we get. So let's go. So in this video, we want to keep the experiment simple. We don't want it to turn into a symposium on every possible thing that you can do with a Mark IV. So we're going to keep the amount of tweaking to a minimum, and here are the parameters. I'm only going to mess with the rhythm 1 channel, which is the clean, and the lead channel, which is the highest gain channel. Secondly, the graphic EQ is off, the effects loop of the Mark IV is off, the reverb of the Mark IV is off. I'm running the amp in pentode mode because I don't like mush, and I'm running it at full power, and finally, I'm running it in Class A mode. We're also keeping the recording setup simple. Okay, so we're miking the cab with a trusty old SM57. Then we're running that directly into a UAD Apollo Twin interface, and then directly into Logic Pro. And finally, just know that I'm going to adjust all the levels within Logic so that we don't fall for the trick of thinking that louder is better, although we know that louder is better, but we're going to ignore that fact right now and try and be somewhat scientific moving forward. Okay, so this first example that I'm going to play, it's a cleanish tone, and it's just the amp is set up the way I would have it, just walking on stage on a typical gig, and this is how it sounds good and feels good in a room. Sounds like this. Okay, so that was interesting to me because it kind of is illustrative of a problem that I have a lot, which is that the clean tone that I was just playing with, like, it felt and sounded good in the room. But I'm not happy with how it kind of made it to tape. It's a clean tone, but there's not really a lot of character to it. It's a little pokey and spiky, and it's lacking some girth and harmonic character to it. So if I did not have the power station, the first thing that I would look at on this amp is I would look at the rhythm gain input. and I would goose it a little bit. So right now it's at 7, and I'm gonna turn it up to 9, and we'll just play the amp, same example like that, and we'll see what happens there, okay? Okay, so that was really interesting to me, listening back that time. That fixed some of the stuff that was bothering me before. It rounded off some of the edges and made it a little thicker so it's not going to get lost and like real twinky in the mix. Twink, twink, twink. But what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to back that gain back down to where it was normally. And then I'm actually going to turn the overall output up to 7. Okay, so we're going to listen and see what happens there. All the other settings stay the same. So let's check it out. Okay, so that time, it's, you know, to me, in my ear, I don't have the greatest ears in the world. I don't claim to be, you know, Eric Johnson or anything, but to me that kind of accomplished a lot of the same thing, that just turning that preamp gain up. But I did hear something that I thought was going to happen, which is the bass monster starts to sneak in a little bit and gets a little woofy on the bottom end. So this time I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I don't have bass up much at all right now. I think it's like at 3, but I'm going to roll it back to like 1.5, okay? And we're going to listen to it and see what happens. I think it's going to clear stuff up, have it be less congested, and it'll sit in the mix a lot better. Let's check it out. Okay, so a thing to remember here, it might sound a little anemic on the bottom now because we're just listening to this track like completely isolated, no reverb, no room, it's not being mixed with anything else. But one of the things that I know about getting guitar to sit right in the mix is we need room for the bass, you know, whether it's bass guitar or bass synth or whatever, like we need to clear those frequencies for that and the bass drum. So this clean tone is starting to work for me. Of course, there are no drums, so I'm not sure exactly. I would probably tweak it further, but just backing off the bass that little bit really helped for me. So what I'm going to do this time is like, okay, I got a clean tone that works, but now we're going to totally goose the power section. I'm at 7 right now. I'm just going to go full on. I'm going up to 10 just for grins, and let's see what happens. Okay, so to me that's absolutely bananas because it really didn't do much of anything. It's almost like the power band, you know, where stuff is saturating and really changing. Like it's done its thing by the time it reaches 7. And 10, it really didn't do much. So just while we're on this trip here, let's now engage the rhythm gain. What is it? Rhythm gain input, and I'm going to put this back. Let's roll it up to let's just do 10 and see what happens. You know, when we just everything is kind of dimed here on the clean channel. Okay, so EQ is the same, but the output is on 10 and the rhythm gain input is on 10. Let's check it out. Okay, so that's super interesting, and to me it's kind of pointless. It's super ratty and gnarly at that point, and it's kind of like, you know, why even be on the clean channel anymore? You know, you're probably better served moving to the second channel of the Mark IV at that point, and you know, if you're looking for that kind of sound. Was interesting to hear though, you know, everything that we kind of have on tap with this particular EQ setting, with both the output section and the input gain dimed on the clean channel on a Mark IV. So let's check out some gain sounds now. Okay, so the Mark IV lead channel. As I said before, I'm not using the graphic EQ or anything, so nothing super extreme. Just kind of going with a kind of a straight ahead rock saturated lead rhythm tone here, and just the way that I would set it up walking out on stage to do a gig, and it sounds like this. Okay, so unlike the first clean example where I heard it back and I was, kind of cringy, listening to I'm satisfied with the sound. It's perfectly passable. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn the power section up to, it's at 4, we're going to turn it up to 7 now. And I'm not going to change anything else, and we'll give that a listen. Okay, so that's pretty groovy. Nothing really drastic happening there. You can hear a little bit more harmonic information kind of, seeping into the cracks a little bit and filling things out. But no weird frequencies kind of ruining stuff. So we're going to make the jump to light speed and turn it all the way up to 10 and listen to it. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, so that's pretty predictable. Everything's completely browned out now. It sounds kind of cool, but definitely the bass woofiness is kind of creeping in. So I'm going to keep everything the same, but we're going to back off the bass control from 4 just down to 3. This is pretty sensitive here, and let's give it a listen. Okay, so that totally works for me. It sounds a touch boxier, but we lost the bass issues that were starting to crop up. So I'm actually going to stop monkeying around with the Mark IV, and I'm going to introduce a little mojo coming from the Power Station's reactive load switches. So I'm going to keep all the settings on the Mark IV the same this time, but I'm going to, instead of running both switches in the flat position, I'm going to, with the bottom switch, I'm going to switch from flat to warm. And let's see how that sounds. Okay, so that was really cool, but you can kind of hear it's real thumpy on the bottom now, and starting to enter that woofy territory. So I have a plan. We're going to keep everything the same, but this time I'm actually going to back off of the output volume on the Mark IV. Instead of being all the way at 10, we're going to back off to 7, because I have a theory that the woofiness is going to disappear, and we're just going to kind of keep some cool thump on the bottom. And let's just play and check it out. All right, that works for me. That's a perfectly usable tone. And it's funny how just backing off in the power section, just that little bit, clean it up enough to where it's not tubby on the bottom. It's thumpy. It's got some nice punch, but it's still tight. And so I think this tone will be, it'll be thick, but it'll actually cut still when we add the bass and the bass drum in there. So we're not done yet. Let's, just for grins while we're here, let's take the switches that control the response to the reactive load. We're going to take the bottom switch all the way up to deep, and then we're going to take the top switch and go all the way up to edge. And we'll play it this time, and stand back. All right, so I definitely dig that tone too. It's interesting, when you bump up the reactivity of the bottom end and the top end, it almost has this default effect of sucking out some of the mids, which gives you kind of that smiley face EQ curve and brings you a little bit closer to kind of metal territory. So that's a cool aggressive tone that I could definitely use. I dig it. So this is a super fun little experiment for me to do, and I learned a lot about my little Mark IV combo here. But I have to say that as a standalone unit, I'd still use it the way I have for years. In a live context, it works great. Just using the power section as kind of a volume control. But I have to say, if I was going to use this amp in more of a recording situation, I definitely wouldn't want to do without the power station, because I just had a lot more tonal nuance available to me. while using this unit. And the other thing that it can't be demonstrated via video or even audio clips is that when you engage the power section, it's just a lot more fun to play the amplifier because the amp's giving you a lot more back, and it just feels a lot more interactive. And if you've never experienced that before, I highly advise you to check it out. And if you have, you know, I know you know. So to wrap up here, we're going to show the power station in all its glory by plugging a delay pedal into the effects loop, because we got the power section of the Mark IV good and goosed, so I couldn't use the effects loop of that amp if I wanted to without getting a bunch of gobbledygook. So what the power station's doing for us here is getting our signal up loud and also amplifying our clean effects. So thanks so much for checking this out. Hopefully you'll hit the like and subscribe button. And if you want to see more stuff like this, hit the notification bell icon so that when we release more material, you will be the first to know. So thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.